Prince Harry's already on his way back to LA after a flying visit to London to see his father, King Charles, after his cancer diagnosis. He went to Clarence House yesterday for the first meeting with the King in 16 months, but the meeting only lasted 30 minutes. It's understood he spent the night in a hotel rather than at a royal palace, and while Harry heads home, Prince William holds the fort. He today returned to royal duties after taking a period of time off work to help Princess Kate in her recovery from abdominal surgery. Prince of Wales is taking on a number of engagements on behalf of the King while he steps back from public duties to receive treatment. Charles will still continue with state duties, though, including his weekly audience with the Prime Minister today. That meeting was held over the phone today, though, instead of in person. Joining me now to discuss all of this, TalkTV Royal Editor Sarah Hewson and also Royal Biographer Hugo Vickers. Thank you both for joining me. Good to have you both on board. I might speak to Hugo because, Sarah, we're very regular in speaking to this about this kind of thing together. So I'll speak to Hugo because it's good to have him on the show. Nice to see him. Hugo, I was on this morning today on ITV, and Dermot, who was one of the presenters, Dermot O'Leary, said he didn't feel comfortable with people surmising and giving opinions and theorising. And I think the word used was sophistry about how short the meeting was between Harry and his father, whether it should have been longer, whether Charles and the Queen should have waited longer to go to Sandringham. He didn't feel comfortable discussing it. Now, just because he doesn't mean we can't. But I wonder whether you feel that it is not only appropriate, but right and fitting that we have a view on these things. After all, they are our royal family.
They are indeed our royal family. I slightly agree with him, actually, about this. But on the other hand, let's discuss it. I think it's really good that Prince Harry came over to see his father. He has engagements with Invictus Games, I think, in Canada later on. So if he didn't come now, he probably wouldn't have been able to come for some time later. Full marks to him for coming over. Okay, it's a short visit. He comes in, he sees his father, and he goes off again. As far as going to Sandringham is concerned, I think you'll find that the helicopter probably had to take off in daylight, so that would have meant that it couldn't have been very much longer. But, you know, at these awful moments when, you know, your father is ill, you're a long way away, you want to come and see him. And if we don't know, it's none of our business what they talked about, but assuming that he came to wish his father well, that I honestly cannot think of a better tonic for his father at this moment than having his son come and see him, because the King has left the door wide open for Prince Harry all the time. He's never responded to any of the things said, and this time the door was open and Prince Harry came in through it. I think that's good.
I think you're right, but I also think that lots of the commentary is only stemming from and emanating from a sense of great goodwill towards the King, and also, you know, a great sense of caring and feeling for him and feeling for the family and worrying about him. And I think that's why, really, there's been this kind of response, which is, oh my gosh, only 30 minutes. That's because we put ourselves in his place. We imagine a rift with our beloved child, and we think, my gosh, to come all the way across the Atlantic for such a short meeting. You sort of think, once you've said hello and how was your trip and goodbye, we're now going to Sandringham, you know, what is the time left to say anything else? So I don't think this comes from a position of judging or criticising or in any way wishing to upset or say anything unkind about Harry or his father, but really from the other perspective.
Yes, I just go back to my original point that I think it's great that he came. It was good that he came over for the coronation to support his father. He didn't stay very long then, as you recall. You can get through quite a lot in half an hour. I mean, we will talk for probably 2 or 3 minutes and we will say quite a lot of things. You won't want me here for half an hour, but if we did stay for half an hour, we'd get through a great deal more, I suspect.
I just suppose people wonder, you know, at the idea of a flying visit, and then you get the phrase a token visit. You know, you come to come, you walk in the door, you're there, you leave, at least you went. But was there any time in so brief and attenuated a visit for any genuine rapprochement, any real thawing, any actual expression of cordiality, which of course is what everybody would wish for that family and for every other troubled family?
Yes, well, people keep asking people like me whether there can be a reconciliation. And as you know, Vannesa, there can always be a reconciliation, and it has to start somewhere. And perhaps it started yesterday afternoon.
Let me bring Sarah into this. I mean, Sarah, obviously you've been talking about this. This is your job as our royal editor. Do you feel any compunction? Do you feel any hesitation about talking about it? Do you feel as if, look, as Hugo said, he came, he saw his father, that's a good thing, that's all we need to say, that's all that should be said? Or do you think people are quite right to say, gosh, that was awfully quick? You know, it's not as if
Well,
any
as a
of them
journalist,
had to report for work on the kind of, you know, the factory floor with a timer. They didn't have to be keyed in or keyed out. If Harry delayed an Invictus Games meeting in Canada by a couple of days, nobody would care because he's Harry. He can do whatever he likes. Likewise, the King's, you know, helicopter to Sandringham. There are many other ways of getting to Sandringham from London. Most of us would have to use one of those, whether it's a bus, a train, or a car. No, he's got access to all of those. So I think lots of people would think, you know, it wouldn't have been difficult for them to organise spending a little more time together. That's all, really.
Yeah, I suppose where I do agree with Hugo and Dermot is I'm not really overly comfortable with what becomes speculation about the nature and the tone of that meeting because we weren't in the room. And so what we do know about that meeting is it was between 30 and 45 minutes at Clarence House, that the king was tired, we're told, after the procedure that he underwent as part of his treatment on Monday. And that might have been one of the reasons why it was shorter. But also, the Sun reporting today that he did actually delay his departure to Sandringham to make sure that he could spend some time with his son, Harry, and that helicopter taking off later than was originally planned. And Hugo's right, taking off in daylight. It was also pretty terrible weather yesterday. I completely understand why people are questioning, well, hang on a minute, Prince Harry flew all this way from LA to London to see his father, and it only seems like a short meeting. All that we can hope, and you know, there are those of us, and you are, I know, are one of them, Vannesa, who want to see this as the start of something more in terms of a healing of that broken relationship. All we can hope is that that first meeting that has taken place since the death of the Queen, the first private face-to-face meeting between Harry and his father, is the start of things. We know they've been talking on the telephone, and perhaps now those conversations can become more regular and the start of things. It's a little tricky because the King doesn't have a mobile phone, but I think it will have been a very important meeting, very much welcomed by his father, Charles, that Harry made the effort to come here. And I think we have to watch this space on where things go from here.
And Hugo, you know, one of the spaces being watched, of course, it's inevitable, is the space where Harry could have gone to see his brother William and might have gone either to visit his sister-in-law who's recuperating, or at least to the place, to the house, and said, you know, please take my good wishes to Kate. I'm bringing some flowers, I'm bringing a cake, and I really, we know Meghan has sent this for her, and we want to say how much we love her and we wish her well in her recovery. But of course, there's been a great big gap where that space is, because there's been no suggestion whatsoever of the brothers getting together in any way at all. Lots of phrases used about it in the press today. One of them, you know, just too much bad blood has flown under the bridge for that to happen. Do you feel that it's irreparable, the rift?
Well, once again, I don't think anything is irreparable if people are prepared to make the effort, but that requires effort on both sides, of course. And I think that there's been enough bandied about, which has been unpleasant, for there'll be a lot of bad blood left between the two brothers, and particularly, of course, as you'll appreciate, because they were incredibly close beforehand, and that makes it much more difficult. We don't know whether he sent flowers or not. All I can tell you is that Queen Mother, when she went to Paris, would always send flowers to the Duchess of Windsor. She wouldn't go and see her, but very correct of her to do so. You can't fault it. That's all that's required. She doesn't have to go out and buy the flowers herself, etc. So these things are possible to be done. But I think that, just going back to what we were talking about before, when you think of the King, as he returns to Sandringham, I think he'd be jolly pleased that his son made the effort to fly all this way to visit him and fly all the way back again. I mean, goodness me, that's a long way. I think that's highly commendable. And I think that, you know, everybody comes out of this pretty well, to be honest.
And one of the kind of conclusions being drawn, Sarah, is that the King and Queen were resoundingly congratulated on making his diagnosis of an enlarged prostate public. This was breaking with precedent. The late Queen kept quite stum about her ailments. We heard a few of Prince Philip's, but not that many. This was considered to be a great thing, and it's resulted in a vast increase in men, in particular, asking doctors for advice and going to have themselves tested and all that kind of thing. And it will end up saving a great many lives, and that's terrific. But what's being said today is that now, with this further development, this openness, this kind of transparency has very abruptly stopped, and we don't really know, probably nor should we know quite what's going on with the King medically. And I wonder whether, what do you think will have caused the change in policy, once very, very open and within a few days not so open?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already seen a significant shift just by using the word cancer and revealing a cancer diagnosis. If you think back to the King's grandfather, George VI, when he had a lung removed because there was a large carcinoma in his lung, it was described as structural abnormalities. The word cancer wasn't used at all, and it wasn't revealed until after his death. In the latter years of the late Queen's life, we talked about mobility issues, very veiled terms. So already the specifics of cancer is a step further, but I agree, we don't know the nature of the cancer. That's not to say that we're not going to know that in the future. I don't think the palace have ruled out the fact that the King may talk about this a little bit more in the future, but not at this stage. And they said, not so as not to avoid speculation. Well, inevitably there has been much speculation around this, but I think the fact is this shows that cancer does not discriminate, doesn't it? And it affects all families, whether or not you are royal or otherwise. And the hope is that, much like when he revealed his diagnosis of an enlarged prostate, that led to a huge surge in people seeking out information about it, and might well encourage others to think a little bit more about getting those checkups.
Hugo, I wonder if you were surprised by the initial openness, or whether you're surprised now by the kind of revised position, which is don't tell us all too much. Not that I don't, of course, appreciate that, every human being has the right to privacy when it comes to their intimate personal health issues, but there was this great openness, now less so.
Well, you say less so, but I mean, they've told us about the cancer. There probably isn't very much to report at this point, and I don't think we want to have daily bulletins about every single aspect of this thing. I suspect that the next thing that you will hear is probably hopefully some good news to say, things are going well, and perhaps it's all under control. That may take a little while to do. I don't know, but I don't think we need to know everything about it. And the news will move on. We will leave him in peace. He will be able to continue his role as a constitutional monarch. And of course, thanks to technology, just as we saw the Queen during lockdown, we didn't actually see her out and about. It's quite possible that we'll see him doing the odd Zoom, and we'll be able to reassure ourselves that he's doing well, assuming that he is doing well, which, all being well, that's what will happen. That's
Sarah,
what I would hope.
And Sarah, the Prince of Wales, Prince William, was going to scale back his duties enormously to support his wife and be around for his children. We know that. Now he's had to step into the breach sooner than he would have wanted to. It all starts pretty much this evening. And he has to, because there are not very many of the royal firm who are not infirm at the moment and who are, fit and healthy. Apart from Princess Anne particularly, the Queen's been stepping up as well. But Princess Anne, wasn't it 4 different royal appearances in one day, the day before yesterday?
Yes, yesterday I think it was actually, Vannesa, 4 appearances, which is pretty normal actually for Princess Anne. But William, as you say, back on duty today. We saw him earlier on today conducting an investiture at Windsor Castle. First time we've seen him really on duty in 3 weeks. And then this evening, as you mentioned, he will be attending the London Air Ambulance Charity Gala, and he's due to give a speech there. And in that speech, we are expecting him to make some reference to his father's cancer diagnosis and potentially to thank the public for their support of his father and the wider family at this time. He doesn't want that to become the issue. He wants the event to be about the London Air Ambulance charity, but is mindful of the fact that there is a huge public interest and a huge amount of concern for the King at this time. So I think we're going to see that, and that will be significant. But yes, very much seeing the Prince of Wales stepping up at a time when he's got an awful lot on his plate back at home as well.
Hugo, my final question to you. The King is a man of great faith. He's also a man of intellect, and he's a man of, he's a polymath. He's interested in many, many different things. How do you think he is dealing with this cancer diagnosis as a person, as a human being, the kind of man that he actually is?
Well, he'll need a lot of positivity to get through it all, as anyone else who suffered from such an illness would need to express. What I think he will feel, though, is a sense of disappointment that, having only relatively lately become a head of state, it seems to me that he's doing a great job and that he's really enjoying it, and that in a way his status as head of state has made it possible for him to move a lot of the issues that he's interested in forward in a quiet way, behind the scenes, not making controversial speeches and so forth. He can talk one-to-one to President Macron of France or President Biden or whoever it is that he wishes to speak to. And to have this setback so early on in his actual reign must be very disappointing. So I think we wish him well, and we hope that they will have caught it in time and they can sort it all out, and that he will soon be back in action again. But it's obviously not a good thing. So he's got to come to terms with that, I guess.
Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you for joining me.